All right, so CBD. It's everywhere you look these days, right?
Yeah, it's definitely having a moment.
Totally. But I feel like there's also a lot of confusion around it, you know? Like, where to even start?
Definitely. It's easy to get lost in all the jargon, isolate, full spectrum.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today, trying to cut through the noise and figure out what it all really means.
Sounds like a plan.
So to guide our deep dive, we're looking at some materials from Hempex, which seems like a pretty major player in the CBD space.
Oh, for sure. They're doing some really interesting stuff.
Yeah, we've got this excerpt from their buyer's guide, and then also a company briefing document. Kind of gives us a peek behind the curtain.
Right on.
So maybe to kick things off, let's just get on the same page. When we say isolate versus full spectrum CBD, what are we even talking about?
Basically, it comes down to how pure the CBD is. So isolate, like the name suggests, is pure CBD. They've isolated just that molecule.
Okay, so it's like stripping everything else away.
Exactly. And you're usually looking at something like 99% pure CBD. Then you've got full spectrum, which is a whole different animal.
How so?
Well, instead of just isolating the CBD, full spectrum products keep all the other naturally occurring compounds found in the hemp plant.
Interesting. So it's like comparing a single ingredient to a whole recipe, kind of.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
But then the question is, why would someone choose one over the other? What are the deciding factors?
I think that's the million-dollar question, right?
Mhm.
And honestly, it really boils down to your individual needs and priorities.
Okay, I like that. So let's break it down, starting with isolate. Why might someone go that route?
Well, a big one is THC sensitivity.
Ah, yeah, that makes sense. THC being the psychoactive compound in cannabis, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
So with isolate, you're avoiding THC entirely, as long as, of course, you're buying from a reputable source.
Right. Always a good caveat.
Sure.
Yeah.
But assume you are, isolate gives you that peace of mind, especially important if you're subject to drug testing or anything like that.
Totally. So peace of mind, precision, purity, those are some of the isolate perks.
Absolutely.
What about Hempex specifically? Do they address that THC concern?
They do. They're very upfront about all their products being Farm Bill compliant, which basically means they contain less than 0.3% THC.
Which is key if you're, concerned about legality and all that.
Exactly. So yeah, if those are your priorities, isolate could be a good fit.
Makes sense. So we've covered isolate purity and precision. Now, what about full spectrum? Where does that shine?
Full spectrum is where things get really interesting, I think, because it's all about that entourage effect.
The entourage effect. Now we're talking. Break that down for me.
So remember how we were saying full spectrum keeps all those naturally occurring compounds?
Yeah, like the whole recipe, not just one ingredient.
Right. So the entourage effect is basically the idea that all those compounds, cannabinoids, terpenes, flavonoids, the whole gang, they work together synergistically to enhance the overall effects.
Whoa, okay, so it's not just about the sum of the parts, it's about how they interact.
Exactly. You get it.
That's so cool. I've heard people say that full spectrum just feels different, but I never really understood why.
Yeah, it's like you could have a delicious meal with just
Yeah.
chicken and rice, right? But adding in some herbs and spices, some flavor, that's what takes it to a whole other level.
Okay, that analogy definitely works for me. So full spectrum is about embracing the complexity of the plant, potentially getting more out of the experience. I dig it. But then the question becomes, how do you even begin to choose between these two very different approaches?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, right? It really comes down to personal preference. Some people love the purity and the predictability of an isolator. Makes sense, right?
Yeah, it's total control freaks like me, right?
Totally. But then there are those who just feel like full spectrum. It just gives them a more, holistic, maybe a more well-rounded experience, There's really no right or wrong answer. It's more about figuring out what works best for you.
Okay, I like that. Finding your own CBD match. So how does a company like Hempex approach this? Because they offer both, right?
They do. And that's what's kind of cool about them. It's not like they're just, pushing one over the other. They've really seemed to invest the time to understand both. And like you said, they offer a full range of products. But what's really interesting is that they're also really digging deep into these lesser-known cannabinoids like CBDA and CBGA, which you don't always see.
No, you're speaking my language. I'm always down to geek out about the cutting edge of wellness. What's the deal with these other cannabinoids? Why are they significant?
Well, I kind of think about it like, when scientists first started mapping the human genome, like for the longest time, it was all about CBD and THC, right? They were kind of the celebrities of the cannabinoid world.
Right.
But now there's all this really interesting research emerging that suggests that these other cannabinoids like CBDA and CBGA might have their own really unique benefits. Like we're just starting to scratch the surface.
So are we talking potential game changers here? Things that, CBD just can't do on its own?
It's honestly too early to say for sure, but the early research is really promising. Like, for example, some studies have shown that CBDA in particular might be even more effective than CBD at supporting a healthy inflammatory response, which is huge.
Whoa.
Right. And what's cool about Hempex is they really control their process from like seed to sale. You know what I mean? So they're in a really unique position to explore these kind of niche compounds in a way that's really meticulous and, with a lot of integrity.
It's like the difference between like getting a tomato from your garden versus the grocery store, right? Like you know exactly where it's been, what's gone into it. But for someone just starting out, I imagine it can feel overwhelming. There's so much information out there. So how does Hempex make it easier for consumers to make informed choices?
I think it comes down to transparency, which honestly, Hempex seems to really get. They're big on third-party testing.
Okay, and third-party testing, just for anyone who's not familiar, that basically means an independent lab is verifying the potency and the purity of their products, right?
Exactly. It's like having an unbiased referee. And the cool thing is that Hempex actually publishes a certificate of analysis, a COA,
Oh yeah, I've seen those floating around.
for every single batch of product on their website, which I think is huge.
Okay, so no shady business going on here. You can see exactly what you're getting.
Yeah.
But what's on those COAs? What should we be looking for? So these COAs are like a nutritional label, but for cannabinoids.
Yeah, exactly. They break it all down for you.
Yeah.
Like the exact concentrations of all the different cannabinoids. So, how much CBD is in there, how much CBGs or any THC, all of that.
Okay.
Plus, they're checking for all the stuff you don't want to see, right? Like pesticides, heavy metals, any residual solvents from the extraction process.
Yeah, nobody wants those.
Nobody wants that. So it's really about making sure you're getting a really clean, pure product.
For sure. Sounds like Hempex is really serious about their quality control, which I appreciate. But, transparency is only one piece of the puzzle, right? There are a lot of CBD brands out there. So what makes Hempex's products different? Like, who are they making these products for?
It seems like they've got a pretty wide range. It's not just, one type of CBD user.
Okay.
They have stuff for people who are just starting out, just dipping their toes into the CBD world. Maybe they've heard some buzz and they're curious. But then they also have products that are clearly targeted towards, more experienced wellness enthusiasts, people who are really looking for something specific.
Okay, so a little something for everyone. I like that. Tell me more, though. Like, what kinds of products are we talking about? Give me the rundown.
Well, I mean, for the newbies, they've got all the classics, your tinctures, your gummies, your topicals, the kinds of things you can easily incorporate into your routine. Just kind of see how you feel, how your body responds.
Makes sense. Start with the basics.
Exactly. But then they also have, options that are formulated for more, targeted needs, like sleep support or post-workout recovery.
Okay, so they're going after those, like, common pain points.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, those are the things that, a lot of people are struggling with.
For sure. But you mentioned specialized products, too. What falls into that category?
Well, that's where you start to see their focus on those, like, lesser-known cannabinoids really come into play. They've got products featuring CBDA and CBGA, which, like we were talking about before, those are showing some really, really exciting potential benefits.
Right.
And they're even, they're not just keeping it to themselves, they're actually supplying these ingredients to other manufacturers.
Oh, wow. Interesting. So they're not just creating finished products, they're also empowering other businesses to innovate.
Totally. Which I think is so cool.
Yeah.
It really speaks to their commitment to, moving the whole industry forward.
Absolutely.
It's not just about, how much CBD can we sell.
Yeah.
It's more about, how can we really advance our understanding of what these plants can do.
I love that approach. It's not just about selling a product, it's about expanding our understanding of this whole world. So as we start to wrap up our deep dive today, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from this conversation?
I think just the fact that the world of CBD is, it's so much bigger than a lot of people realize. It's not just, one thing. There's all these nuances, all this variety. So I think the biggest takeaway is just, don't be afraid to do your research, to ask questions, and to really figure out what works best for you.
So well said. And for anyone listening who's feeling that spark of curiosity, definitely head over to hempex.com. They've got a ton of great information on their website. Plus, they've got a whole team of experts who are ready to answer your questions and, help you navigate this whole world, which can feel overwhelming sometimes.
Yeah, totally.
So whether you're, CBD curious or you're already a seasoned enthusiast, there's always something new to learn. Until next time, stay curious, my friends.